Here is something that will mess with your head. Two of the most bitter enemies in modern history, capitalism and communism, may have actually been working toward the same goal. And China is the proof. China was deeply communist for decades. Then in the 1980s, it quietly shifted capitalism. No revolution, no chaos, just a smooth transition that made China the fastest growing economy on earth. If these two systems are truly opposites, how does that happen without a single major upheaval? That question opens a door to something most history classes never talk about. We are taught that the 20th century was a clash between two great ideas: capitalism versus communism, left versus right, good versus evil, depending on which side you were on. But what if that framing is a lie? What if communism was never really the enemy of capitalism at all? What if the real enemies of capitalism are something else entirely? Capitalism is not threatened by workers demanding equality. Its real enemies are older and more stubborn than that. The first enemy is monarchy. Kings and strong rulers throughout history had a habit of cancelling debts, redistributing land, and clipping the wings of wealthy merchants whenever they got too powerful. The second enemy is religion. Almost every major religion teaches that the pursuit of money above all else corrupts the soul. The third enemy is nationalism. Capitalism needs money to cross borders without guilt. If you feel a strong duty to your people and your nation, you hesitate before shipping jobs overseas. The fourth enemy, and this one surprises people, is democracy. If workers actually had political power, they would vote to redistribute wealth. Now look at what communism does to each of those enemies. Communism abolishes monarchy. It replaces the king with a party which is really just an oligarchy, a group of wealthy administrators who run the economy. Communism destroys religion. Karl Marx himself called it the opiate of the masses. Eliminate religion and all that is left is the material world, money and production. Communism rejects nationalism. Its entire slogan is "Workers of the world, unite. Class is more important than country. Borders are obstacles to be erased." Communism dismisses democracy. The party argues that workers have been brainwashed and cannot be trusted to vote correctly. So an elite vanguard must lead them. Look at that list. Communism and capitalism have almost identical enemies. Communism just eliminates those enemies from a different angle, using language that sounds radical and revolutionary. If you look at the biography of Karl Marx, strange things start to stand out. Marx was a German radical who was expelled for calling for world revolution. He fled to Britain, the most capitalist country on earth at that time, and Britain let him stay. He spent years writing in the British Museum, funded by the British State's library system, never bothered by authorities. Where did his money come from? His partner, Friedrich Engels, whose father was a wealthy industrialist. A factory owner's son was funding the man who wanted to destroy factory owners. Before Marx, the dominant left-wing idea in Europe was socialism, gradual redistribution of wealth through democratic means. Most educated people expected it to happen naturally as industrialism matured. Marx came along and said, no, that is too slow. You need a violent revolution. You need to abolish all property entirely. But abolishing all property is a completely different thing from redistributing wealth. Redistribution helps workers and the middle class together. Abolition turns the middle class into enemies of the movement. After the revolutions of 1848 swept across Europe, the ruling class was terrified. Workers and the middle class were forming alliances and pushing for democracy, social reform, and limits on aristocratic power. The solution was to break the coalition apart, create the idea that the real conflict is not between workers and the nobility, it is between workers and the middle class. Communism did all of that. It took the reasonable and popular idea of socialism and turned it into something that demanded the abolition of all private property, the destruction of religion, and the party dictatorship. China is the end of the story. The Communist Revolution destroyed Chinese religion, dismantled traditional culture, erased Confucian values, and broke apart the old social order. And then, once all that was gone, capitalism walked in and found the most fertile ground it had ever seen. None of this means we know for certain that capitalism invented communism as a deliberate weapon. History is messier than that. The next time you see two powerful forces presented as total opposites, ask yourself, what are they both against? Because sometimes the most important truth is not in the fight you are watching. It is in what that fight is quietly destroying on the side. The real struggle in history has almost never been between the two sides you are told to choose between.